Welcome to the Commentary Podcast. Just a quick disclaimer, none of these opinions reflect the greater Phillipian board, but are our own opinions. Hi, my name is Michael, my pronouns are he, him, and I am a lower, and I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. Would our guests like to introduce themselves?
Hello, my name is Sophia. I'm a lower from San Francisco.
Hello, my name is Piper. I'm a lower, also from San Francisco.
Hello, my name is Sebastian. I'm an upper from Boulder, Colorado.
So I'd like to first thank you guys for joining me on this episode. Today we're focusing on the climate movement at Andover. So our first question is, what is your personal experience with and exposure to the climate movement?
I would say that I am very involved in the climate movement at Andover. I serve as the External Affairs Coordinator for the Phillips Academy Sustainability Coalition. I've been involved with sustainability at Andover since, I think actually before freshman year due to Climate Reading Club, and have in general been involved with basically everything that's transpired in relation to sustainability at Andover since I've arrived. As such, my perception of the climate movement at Andover might be a bit skewed because I might, due to my involvement, think it more prevalent than it actually is. But it is, in my humble opinion, very prevalent, as the Phillips Academy Sustainability Coalition is, I believe it's 1/10 of every club on campus, the Phillips Academy Sustainability Coalition and its initiatives. And it is also the largest club on campus. So I would say the climate movement is quite strong at Andover.
I think sort of adding on to Sebastian, but I've been a part of the PASC, and I know that there are a lot of students compared to other clubs in the PASC, but I can't say that a lot of students who aren't a part of the club have sustainability on their minds as constantly as we would like. And none of my friends are really part of the PASC or are too dedicated to sustainability. And I think the PASC, it does a good job at attracting students who are already interested in the environment and in sustainability, but their outreach programs, I'm not sure how, or it might just be the student population at Andover, what characterizes them, but I don't know how much they've done recruiting people who weren't already sustainably curious.
I agree with Piper. So I'm not too involved with the PASC, but outside of Andover, I definitely do stuff related to climate change. I've been involved in a couple of organizations, and climate change is definitely something that I want to be involved with in my future and an issue that I want to tackle with in my future career. So I think I have kind of a unique perspective because sustainability is definitely one of my core values, and I can kind of look into the PASC, and I really admire all the work that they've been doing. As Sebastian said, they're one of the most prominent and established clubs at Andover, which I think is super admirable. But then I also would have to agree with Piper. I think that students who are not involved in the PASC are not necessarily the most educated, and they don't really see it as one of their core values. But I think that with that difficulty also comes a lot of opportunity for the PASC to bring in more people who don't necessarily really care about sustainability, but could learn more about it.
Yeah, I guess I agree. I'm quite involved with the PASC and have been through my freshman year. And I think it also depends on your background, your past school, what you were exposed to. And so I guess that is a perfect segue to the next question. We all know Andover is a melting pot of culture and backgrounds and people from all over the world. We see it every day. Andover has 22 initial placements in math to have everyone started meet them where they are. And so what is Andover doing to meet their student body where they are with certain issues such as sustainability and climate activism, Andover being the administration or the clubs? What are they doing well to expose their students to these important topics?
I think that the Probably the best thing that Andover itself is doing, which isn't really Andover itself, the administration hasn't actually done anything in relation to exposing the general student body to sustainability. While there are courses like environmental science or climate change and history that are like related to sustainability and climate change, no one's going to take them unless they're already interested in that, like Sophia said. So like the school itself and the administration is really not doing anything directly themselves to sort of meet students where they are. However, I will say that they are sort of fairly accepting of student efforts to do that. The example that immediately comes to mind is the Eco Leaders program, which is fairly prominent and also generally well loved by the administration. They have, particularly this year, done a good job of like supporting the program and having the people who run Eco Action work with the deans and faculty to try to get like eco leaders in dorms presenting. This is of course like the bare minimum that admin could do, and they can like start taking action to actually educate the student body. Earth Day On would probably be a good starting step. But I guess what they do right now is they're fairly encouraging and receptive to student efforts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sebastian. I think there's a lot of the outreach or the meeting people where they are in terms of sustainability is led by students themselves, except for the eco leaders. I mean, curriculum-wise, in Bio 100, I know that they talked a bit about sustainability, but I feel like I haven't heard it as directly from the administration as you might assume. I know there was Earth Day On. I can't remember, did the school have a speaker about that, or was it solely the PASC talking about it?
There was not Earth Day On, actually. There was just Earth Day. There was no on to it. And in Earth Day On, it would be similar to how we handle Martin Luther King Day programming. And we'd have no class and everything would be dedicated solely to Earth Day. We had an Earth Day speaker, and we've traditionally had Earth Day speakers, but that's very different from like full integration for that one day.
We could probably have more speakers in there or just integrate it into more curriculums, but
to your point about like Bio 100, I also took Bio 100, and like we did focus on sustainability for like some of spring term, but it's like you think about how many students enter in taking chem or physics, like if that's where the curriculum's going to be, then all those students miss that completely. So yeah.
I think speaking in terms of the teachers, I feel like, doesn't Andover do a thing where the teachers can kind of determine a lot of the course that is covered?
Especially like English and like some parts of history.
So I feel like I've been lucky to have a lot of teachers who care about sustainability. And for example, Doctora Martinez, I don't know if you remember, but for my Spanish class, she challenged us to kind of think about climate change and how we could use Spanish to communicate it. So I think that was great. But as both Sebastian and Piper said, I really feel like the administration should take a step to push all teachers to include sustainability in their courses. And also, on the subject of Earth Day, I just thought it was really surprising that they wouldn't even like take a day off of classes to have sort of an Earth Day programming, because like climate change is at the forefront of our global challenges. It's probably the most pressing issue that we all face. And at a place at Andover where there are like so many talented kids, it just kind of frustrates me that there wouldn't be just one day that Andover could dedicate to solely focusing on climate change.
It's interesting because the Andover Climate Action Plan talks about educating and engaging the campus community, and we've basically come to the consensus that there is a lack of education and engagement from the administrative level. What are other, areas of room for improvement?
One thing regarding administration, first of all, is that they don't necessarily have power over curriculum. That's up to department chairs and the dean of studies. Uh, so like it's mainly sort of just support that they can give to the cause. The deans can't snap their fingers. In terms of general exposure, though, there are infrastructure things that could be done on campus that are not in our climate action plan. For instance, our climate action plan sets a renewable energy goal for, I believe it is 2030, which is fine. That's like the standard thing for renewable energy goals. But just as we fell short to Exeter in niche rankings this year, we also fall short to them in terms of our climate action plan, because Exeter sets a carbon, I believe it's like a carbon negative goal by 2030, which is much better than 100% renewables. For those of you who are listening and don't know the difference between the two, 100% renewables, it's just guaranteeing that you're using like no emission stuff. You will no longer emit anything because you're only using renewable energies. If you're carbon negative, however, your operations are actively like reducing emissions and taking carbon out of the atmosphere. I don't know all of the details of Exeter's plan, but I do know that it's much better than ours, and we should try to emulate them in future sort of efforts in relation to campus infrastructure.
I guess speaking on the infrastructure part, I think that it's really important to speak in terms of net negative emissions, because ultimately carbon neutral won't even get us like far enough. We need to be at the point where, as Sebastian said, taking carbon out of the air. And it's important that the school considers that, because like thinking about it, Andover as a microcosm for the greater world, net negative is definitely something that we need to prioritize.
You may have noticed recent extreme weather, aka the massive storm that took us all by storm. So what do you think Andover could do to adapt to these global warming induced events?
Well, one thing about Andover is I think we're actually safe in terms of that. Like, we had power back on before anyone else did because we're filthy rich and we have a big generator. And we were just in that storm in a generally better position than the rest of the town of Andover. And why is that? Because we have a $2 billion endowment. We're like huge. We have a lot of money. So I think what we should be asking ourselves is not how Andover can adapt to climate change, because like, let's be real, we will adapt to climate change because we can just throw money at it, but how we can help the rest of our community adapt to climate change. Because like, Andover, from what I know, holds a lot of power on the City of Andover Town Council because we're probably the largest landowner in Andover. That's my guess, not a factual statement, but I'm guessing it's probably true. As such, we have a lot of power within the town of Andover, and what we should be doing is trying to use that power to help the town of Andover sort of move forward in terms of like sustainability and how we're running our energy grid. I know within the town of Andover itself, they're discussing a new sort of like stretch grid format for arranging the town's energy configuration, and I think we should be supporting efforts within the town to make it more sustainable and more adaptable to this kind of climate disaster, because like, we are extremely privileged here. We're not the people who like are going to get hit the hardest, and honestly Andover is not the people that is going to get hit the hardest, because it's really also quite a wealthy town. If we had less money, power would have been out for even longer than it was in the town. So I think it's not a question of Andover helping itself, but Andover helping other people.
I mean, I just kind of have a question of clarification for you, Sebastian. Do you mean, how do you think we should go about helping the town? Like, is it financially, like backing them, fundraising, or just like using our influence and to like make decisions?
The financial viability of like helping the town or anyone else for that matter is not something I think I really understand entirely. But what I am saying is that in a political sense, within our local community, Andover is probably the most powerful political stakeholder in the town of Andover. And if there are opportunities for politically in terms of how things are managed within the town to make the town more sustainable, I think Andover should be sort of leading the charge in advocating for that on like the town council, because I know we do stuff in relation to that.
Yeah, I don't know too much about what's going on in the town of Andover, but I think it would be really interesting to sort of research, is there some way that the grid could be sort of, I don't know, better unified, create more like two-way communication systems so that there's like surplus energy that's sent back throughout the grid that Andover could contribute to. I'm not really sure, but I think that speaking in terms of energy and conserving it, Andover could have a lot of potential to help with that.
And do you guys think all of this being climate movement and sustainability and climate change, especially in our community, as it affects our community, do you think all of this is beyond our control as busy high school students who are here for only 4 years?
Individuals do have some degree of power in relation to climate change, but it has nothing to do with like recycling or driving an EV. As individuals in a state that has, while it's not entirely functional state government, it has state government that is open to individual stakeholder input. We have a considerable amount of power to make at least some degree of change locally, and maybe this doesn't happen alone, but like any schmuck who cares about climate change can go and join up with like a state advocacy group and start like making moves on legislators to try to get bills passed. It's one thing about the like a lot of political issues, which I guess climate change is now, is that they're not really won on a giant sort of like federal or even international battleground, because those are way too complicated and way too full of stakeholders for anyone to actually like make a tangible difference if you're not the president of the United States. But political issues are won locally, and every individual has some degree of local political power that they can exercise by devoting their time to whatever causes they're passionate about. So I think if you're looking for power in relation to climate change, you should be turning to your local government, and you should be lobbying them, working with advocacy groups, and getting them to do what needs to be done in relation to sustainability.
I mean, I think in part, like, it kind of goes along with, like, local politics and joining up. I think one of the key things is education, and obviously it's very hard, like, you kind of asked in the question, in 4 years for maybe, like, a group of students to really just change the environment and what's happening to it. But I think just in simplest terms, education, and what we can do as students is educate other people and educate students and influence the culture a bit at our school, and then we can carry that on throughout into our adulthood when we're voting on local elections, or when we're making decisions with companies or investing.
For me, I think one of the biggest issues is talking to the people who don't necessarily care about climate change, because I feel like the things that are standing the most in people's way in terms of the climate movement is being able to communicate the importance of climate change to people who don't necessarily believe in it. So I think that it would be really interesting if Andover could kind of teach students how to communicate their purposes and values to ones who have different sorts of ideas. And I feel like that would be quite impactful in terms of like future generations and how we can communicate our ideas.
Hey, Thanks, guys, for joining this episode. To our listeners, I've been made aware that if you're interested in learning and engaging with climate-related content, there is a Climate Cafe podcast. Sebastian, since you're notably involved with the PASC, I thought I'd ask how we can access that.
Hi, yeah, I'm actually also the host of the Climate Cafe podcast, but we're on Spotify. If you go to A Greener Blue and the Instagram page for the PASC, you'll probably find some sort of promotional post for one of our episodes in its post history. Using those posts, you can get to Spotify and listen to all our incredible content.
To your heart's content.
Yes, or you can just Google Climate Cafe, the podcast, but I think we might even be on the second page of results for that, so I'd say stick with Instagram.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.